If you've been around the internet for the last month or so, odds are you've heard about a particular indie game circling around known as Fear and Hunger. If you haven't, then I heavily urge you to delve into this magnificent game and experience it for yourself. Or if you don't mind spoilers, then stick around and enjoy this journey as we explore the mythology behind this gritty, cruel, yet beautiful work of fiction. Before we can get into the fanatical and terrifying deities that inhabit this well-orchestrated world, first the question must be asked, what is Fear and Hunger? Fear and Hunger is a turn-based RPG game created by Happy Paintings using RPG Maker. Taking up the role of either a mercenary, knight, dark priest, or outlander, you're tasked with exploring the ominous dungeon that awaits you. Each of these 4 characters have their own history, beliefs, and, most importantly, a reason for venturing into the hellish dungeon that this story takes place in. Keeping most plot-related information as spoiler-free as possible, save for some gameplay and the latter half of this video, it is through dialogue, item descriptions, and so on that we come to learn that there is something more otherworldly happening in this already eerie world. The initial source of inspiration we can make based on the overall aesthetic and the tone of this game hails from Berserk, and here are a few examples. But it's only through the aforementioned items and descriptions and so on that we come to find out this universe has its own set of religious beliefs. To try and keep things less sporadic, we'll talk about the 3 subsets of gods. That would be the old gods, the new gods, and the ascended gods. Now, while Fear and Hunger Termina expands on this roster with their own additions, we'll only be sticking to those mentioned or covered in the first game. Before we can delve into explaining each god within Fear and Hunger, first we must talk about their homeland. This is a common thing that is true for most mythologies. With the Greeks, they had Olympus, for Norse it would be Asgard, and within China they have heaven. In Fear and Hunger this is no different, as the home of the gods would be the City of Mahabre. Little is truly known about this ancient city, only that it originally served as a place of refuge for the old gods. Much like our own world, the world of Fear and Hunger is home to various different religions and beliefs, rather than being united under one core belief. The first of these we'll go over is that of the old gods. Seen as the original true gods, they represent the most basic yet fundamental concepts that make up the world. Grogorath, the destroyer of man, is well known as both the god of destruction and sacrifice. Though his presence often requires one to spill blood in his name, he's not an inherently evil being. On the contrary, destruction is viewed as a necessity, embodying death and the end itself. By proxy, this also extends to chaos, anarchy, sacrifice, and war. As death is the natural end for all things, it is through this that new life can flourish and the cycle of growth may continue. It is widely believed that, in order to relive and experience the feeling of fear, Grogorath wears the flesh and bodies of both men and women in an effort to disguise himself amongst mankind. Upon defeating the traces of Grogorath, we are given further insight into the rift between mankind and the old gods, as it is stated how the old gods humans knew have left the world due to humanity's selfishness and the desire to usurp their creators. Failing to understand the purity of the old gods' motives, even if they were granted insight, it would be incomprehensible. With destruction and death, there must also come creation and life. Being the antithesis to Grogorath, we have the goddess of fertility, love, lust, and creation, Sylvian. As you might expect with Sylvian being a creation deity, she is the one responsible for creating mankind. It is said that both men and women both were created in her image, which gives her the illusion of being the mother goddess to everyone. While her husband, Grogorath, requires destruction and death, Sylvian's only desire is for humanity to display their love towards one another. There are various ways to interpret this wish, as some enacted by the binding of flesh, a rite known as marriage. Unlike the marriage we know of in the real world, in the world of Fear and Hunger, to marry is to fully unite as one being. Other interpretations of Sylvian's wish view it as, well, the truth as to why she explicitly had abandoned mankind is unknown. But there are a few theories as to why. Despite being made in her image, humanity was incapable of loving her as she had loved them. Love was, to her, something twisted and far more physical, such as the marriage of flesh. Uncertain of when she had abandoned the world, it is likely that she was the first of the old gods to depart, while her husband followed shortly after. While not nearly as prevalent as the prior mentioned old gods, this is still a vital one nevertheless. With actions shrouded in obscurity and seldom any followers, there are only scattered talks pertaining to the god of the depths. Even amongst these fragmented words, one thing is true. They are the core reason as to why the dungeons are always evolving and the layout is ever changing when faced with the new arrivals to the game. Possessing the concept of revulsion and inescapable darkness, it is through one of our main characters, Ragnarvalder, that we learn that worshippers of this god are often forsaken and forgotten. Lacking any self-awareness or even moderate intellect, they are only capable of enacting their predestined duties within the dungeon. Commonly insects, there are those who have completely sold their minds to this god. They include the likes of cave dwellers, body snatchers, and a handful of other enemies you can encounter. Unlike both Grogaroth and Sylvian, who only linger through faint remnants, the god of the depths is always present and existing with a true physical form. With several hearts scattered throughout the dungeon and even a face looming before the player, if the player was to go out of their way and destroy these 3 hearts, the jaws of the deity would open and allow the player to progress onward. And within this god lies the key to Mahabre, otherwise known as the Cube of the Depths. Segueing into one of the shorter segments, the trickster moon god Rayr is only loosely spoken of in the first Fear and Hunger. Because they are a more prevalent figure in Fear and Hunger Termina, I will only talk about the information given in the first game. Being a mysterious figure yet not as obscure as the god of the depths, Rayr is one of the few gods who still overlooks and closely monitors humanity. Spoken of as a jealous kind of deity, Rayr detests the idea of sharing godhood and the world alongside mankind. Due to the mockery and bloated pride of humans alongside the usurping of the old gods, he views such actions as mockery and intends to rid the world of their influence. Some of his servants include the likes of Pocket Cat and Lady Moon. Though the initial presentation of Pocket Cat seems rather unsettling, their goal is to capture children and prevent them from becoming a vessel for a new type of god which could rival the might of the old. The same way that Almer had become both half man and half god. Eventually this plan would crash and burn though, as one of the new gods, Nilvin, had outsmarted the trickster god. After the old gods had abandoned and left mankind, the world and its kingdoms had begun to deteriorate. With the grand desires and values they once had now gone from their world, they were soon replaced with horrid practices and defiled principles. Without any further guidance, a team of 5 mortals had been formed in this time of travesty. Francois, the Dominating One, Nilvin, the Endless One, Valtiel, the Enlightened One, Chambara, the Tormented One, and Nostramus, the Forgotten One. Formed in order to find their lost gods, eventually this venture would take them into the land of Mahabre. Overcoming every challenge that awaited them, it was the doubt and weakness of Nostramus that had formed a rift between he and the 4 remaining members. After marching onward, destroying the legacy of the old gods, this band of mortals had forged a new world order, an age for mankind where they may decide their own destiny and fate by choosing their own gods to worship. In the end, this is where the Fellowship had ascended into their roles as new gods. Being a selfish individual, even after his ascension into godhood, Francois is detested by many of his brethren who inhabit the Grand Hall. Though he wished to unify the warring lands, this was all but fuel for him to attain more strength. Taking up residence within the Golden Temple, Francois serves as both the court guard for those seeking ascension, as well as being the ruler of Mahabre. Becoming an extremely knowledgeable god upon ascending, Valtiel's initial goal, or rather his obsession, had been the creation of artificial life. Originally aiming to create working-class beings, unlike most, he succeeded in his endeavors. Believing that creating life would bridge the gap between the new and the old, as well as unlocking true godhood, it was envy that soon led to the downfall of his creations. Detesting the thought of his creations outliving him, as they had initially been made eternal, Valtiel had placed a limit on their lifespan, creating these artificial workers out of flesh so that one day they may expire. There's little to be said about Chambara the Tormented One. Originally a poet, his core belief was that no great art can be achieved without pain and suffering, a belief that he continues to express even through his ascension as he continues to extend his pain onto others. Though he is not one of the 4 new gods that had embarked on their venture into Mahabre, Nashra is one of the few new gods named and explored within Fear and Hunger. Being a proficient blood mage from the Eastern Sanctuary, he is the self-proclaimed doom and terror of modern man. Preceding Valtael in the Grand Libraries, eventually he was betrayed by his fellow new gods. Widely regarded to be a blunt, brazen, and ill-mannered individual, it was perhaps a mixture of this alongside his frequent violent acts towards others that led to this decision. Nevertheless, it was this betrayal that drives Nashra into seeking revenge onto those who wronged him. Unlike the prior new gods mentioned, there was one thing truly different about Nashra. It was the realization that godhood wouldn't change anything, that it would only aid in repeating an endless cycle. The final member of the Fellowship to embark on Mahabre, Nilven, embodies the endless potential of mankind, as she believes that anything can be achieved if tried hard enough. Aware that eventually, someday, her era would end, she sought out a means to further her legacy, to ensure that her reign would continue even if she was no longer there to witness it firsthand. It was then that she had gone to the Man of Prophecy, the fated one capable of uniting the warring lands together without force. It was with this man that she had conceived their child, who was believed to be the eventual light of mankind. Unlike the other new gods in her fellowship, Nilven has little interest in conflict. Rather, she allows the player to view the backstories of each playable character, Kahara, Darce, Enki, and Ragnvaldr, all in order to display her worries and concern with mankind. Afterwards, she requests that the player takes her child into the heart of darkness. Before I delve deeper and discuss the final new god of this segment, I want to give one of two major spoiler warnings. This involves both a major character as well as a fairly critical revelation, so if you don't mind, then please continue watching. However, if you do, I will leave a timestamp for you to skip ahead. Being the central focus and the main reason behind both Darce and Ragnvaldr's venture into the dungeons, Le'garde is without a doubt one of the most important characters in this game. To achieve the ending involving him, the player must reach his cell before 30 in-game minutes pass. Otherwise, they will be too late and Le'garde will have been executed. It is revealed that the aforementioned Man of Prophecy was none other than Le'garde. With stories and songs written of him long before his birth, not even the new gods knew of his purpose, other than it being a grand one, grander than even themselves. Serving as the leader of the Midnight Suns, it appeared that his goal to unite the world required the ascension into godhood, as this served to be his motivation for raiding Oldegard and encountering Ragnvaldr. This was something he did all in hopes of attaining the Cube of the Depths so that he could access Mahabre. If the player defeats Francois, claims the throne, and ascends, then they will be given the eventual opportunity to combat Le'garde. However, he will no longer be the man the player once knew, but instead, the new god, known as the Yellow King, thus fulfilling his prophecy and mirroring the actions of the ascended god Almer by guiding the world into a golden age. Ascended gods are similar to that of new gods, in which they are mortals who have ascended into divinity. In all reality, this category of gods is the most obscure and few, as the majority are only ever seen in Fear and Hunger 1. There is only one key thing that is commonly shared between them, and that is their strength. It seems that ascended gods, no matter who they may be, all possess strength which rivals that of the old gods. Heavily influenced by Christianity's Jesus Christ, the first ascended deity in Fear and Hunger was Almer. Born in the city of Jataya as a mortal man, raised by a virgin mother, Almer was of humble origins. Gathering popularity and rising to prominence due to his teachings, he eventually gathered 12 apostles in order to potentially bring forth a new world order. Though his endeavors held good intent, the corrupt rulers of the Eastern Sanctuary had caught wind of his actions. Threatened by this, as Almer had managed to unify the world despite differing religions and gods, they subjected him to death by crucifixion. With his death, that marked Year Zero, the beginning of a new calendar year. Ascending to Mahabre upon his death, it was then that he'd become an old god. Returning to the mortal realm in hopes of stopping the tyranny that had been enacted in his absence, both he and his apostles had devised a plan. Using this newfound strength he had obtained through godhood, Almer slaughtered the kings and sultans who had sought to darken the world with their evil ways. Creating a new world order, one at which he stood at the center of, it is praised and worshipped still to this day. Much how in modern mythology, where all these stories hold different tales, so too is the origin of Almer. With Enki in his skin Bible of Almer, it is said that he was created by a master architect who had drawn both man and woman in the likeness of Sylvian. His creation by this architect was to remedy the flaws and imperfections with her original design of humanity. He was destined to be perfect, the very pinnacle of humankind and its potential. Created and born in the year zero, immediately Almer was set to work upon creating this new world order of his. All in all, much like modern myth, it is up to the player on which story they choose to believe in. Once more, I'd like to give one last spoiler warning before I discuss the final god in this video. Timestamps will be provided if you wish to skip ahead and eventually experience this for yourself. If there's anyone that holds more importance than even Le'garde himself, it would be the most unlikely of characters. First encountered as nothing more than a mere little girl in a cage, a defenseless party member with little in the way of offense and defense. Keeping her around will allow you to witness one of the biggest twists yet. Alluded to time and time again throughout the game, from the somber expression she has upon finding Le'garde's deceased body, or Nilven's urgent wish, this one little girl stands as the most vital of characters to encounter. Being the daughter of Le'garde and Nilven, this unnamed girl is the child of light. And should you overcome all odds, should you bring her into the depths as her mother desired, then you will be handsomely greeted with That's right, your reward. Your prize for bringing this girl to the very end is the creation of the second ascended god. The god of fear and hunger. Since birth, she held the soul of an ancient one. Being the child of the prophesized one and a new god, her existence was fated to be a spectacle unlike any other. Being the only ascended god we have the misfortune of fighting, we begin to learn the true strength that these and the old gods have. As whether you win or lose, the ending is inevitable. Giving us a bittersweet ending, we come to learn that despite the grueling hardship this path has taken us down, for the betterment of mankind, it was necessary. That she, the god of fear and hunger, is truly the light needed to usher in an age of betterment. While this isn't your standard form of mythology, one of the key things I aim to do with this channel is discuss a vast variety of gods and myths, whether they be from fictional series or the real world. And over the last few months, I've been totally enamored and in love with this work of art. And yet, after looking deeper into this world, I couldn't seem to find too many videos discussing the myth and the lore behind it. So hopefully this will serve as a good starting point for those of you who are curious about the world of fear and hunger and the mythology behind it. I still heavily recommend that, even if you haven't played the game, that you do so after watching this video. If you'd like to see me discuss more of the gods that show up in Fear and Hunger Termina, why not subscribe, jingle bang that like button, and stick around for more. And while you're at it, make sure to swing by Steam, pick up Fear and Hunger Termina. I'll leave a link in the description for both games, as well as Happy Painting's Twitter account so you can follow them and support them on their future endeavors. This has been Steve Wukong, and I hope you enjoy, and tune in next time as we continue this journey together.